Hello and welcome, Officer Hale. We are so excited to have you here today on Trending Peoria. Before we go too far, can you take a moment to introduce yourself and share a little bit with our community?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to this chat with you. My name is Lisa Hale. I am a police officer with the city of Peoria, and I have been with Peoria for about 14 years. Prior to that, I was actually a second grade teacher, and I'm going to mix dates and years because then people start doing the math and they figure out, oh my goodness, she's that old.
Absolutely.
But I was taught school starting in 1995, and I taught until 2009 when I came to the city of Peoria, and I taught second grade. And prior to that, I was actually a counselor for mentally ill adults. So I have a couple degrees and a master's, and I have a love for education. I have a love for helping people. I come from a family of public servants. They either were, are, want to be. We're all in some way serving our public. And so it was like, I just feel like coming into the world of being an SRO for me is absolutely perfect, going from teaching and then into policing, and being able to combine those two worlds is like a dream come true for me.
Absolutely. And I think you bring up a really great point, which is having that history of serving. And I know as someone who has a family who is also public servants, that just kind of is something you are, and it's innately within you. And a lot of the work you do day to day is informed by all of that. Can you share a little bit about what it looks like for you day to day in the role that you currently have?
Oh my goodness, that is probably one of the hardest questions for me. We actually operate off of a triad, and that triad comes from the National Association of School Resource Officers that we're all trained and certified through before we go into the schools. And that has three parts to it. The main part is law enforcement. So we are a law enforcement officer. A lot of times people will say, "Are you a police officer?" I am. I'm a fully sworn police officer. I can go out on the road and write tickets. I can respond to calls for service. I can do all of the same things as, I don't even want to say regular police officer,
Right.
because that's what I am.
Right.
That's the top of the triad. And then we have informal counselor and mentor, which is another piece of a lot of what we do within the schools. And then we have the piece of law-related education. We go into classrooms and teach, which for me is just a great place to be. It's a great place to get to know the students, make those connections, but also just to stay current with teenage things. I have not been a teenager in a very long time, so that helps. So we have that part of it. And then in addition to that, obviously I respond to everything that it needs a police officer to respond to it at the school. I also serve our feeder schools. So each of the high schools, we have those feeder schools that the SROs take care of the best that they can as well too. Depending on what calls for service we have going on at the schools. But I told you this was a big question.
That's okay.
We have things like, we'll have homeless students, so I'll work with other agencies on advocating for them. I have learned how to fill out food stamp paperwork. I do Social Security cards for kids, their birth certificates, help them get those things. Oftentimes we have 18-year-olds that haven't graduated yet, but decide that they can do it on their own. And it's not that easy. We work with the neighborhoods, the communities, parking in the neighborhood. We have the after-school events, the crisis plans, safety plans. So my typical day is my entire main thing is to keep everybody safe. And I always tell the kids, I'm not just talking about your physical safety. I'm talking about your mental health and your mental well-being as well. So I'm outside in the mornings. I'm outside passing periods. I mean, I could go on and on, but
in your role, you're especially a jack of all trades, serving kind of your community and your school. And as you mentioned, too, those feeder elementary schools that feed into Sunrise Mountain. I know for myself, I grew up in this district as well. And so I had the pleasure of having an SRO at my high school. And all of those things that you do really make an impact and build that relationship between our students and law enforcement and all of these other agencies that you help to support as well. And I also know at the heart of it, though, as you mentioned, it's safety and keeping our students safe. And right now, I know we're in the midst of this safety campaign, and you've seen even an increase in social media threats this year. And the main goal of all of the work that you're doing, our social workers are doing, is to get students to understand that if you see something or hear something, that you say something and do something. Why is that so important? And if a student receives a social media threat, what should they be doing with that?
So let's start with the first part of if they see something, to say something and do something, right? Or hear something.
Yeah.
That is so important because these kids are immersed with each other. They're around each other much more than we all are, right? Like I think I'm everywhere at Liberty, but I can't be everywhere. A teacher can't be everywhere. The lunchroom, the amazing people we have in our lunchroom can't be everywhere. We're not always going to be within earshot or eyeshot of these things that are happening. And so our kids, we depend on our kids to bring that information forward. And I absolutely love this campaign, by the way, because I tell the kids all the time, the FBI says, see something, say something, right? Because that is just exactly what it is. And we need people. We need people to look and watch and see and report. And oftentimes people are afraid to, or they don't know the right avenue to go to report that. So that's huge. It's just such a big help when you have that, not necessarily want to say heads up, but you have an idea that something could be brewing or even something happened, right? Like we need to know those things. So we depend on the kids to come forward. We depend on the parents, the community. We depend on the teachers to come forward as well and say something if they see or hear it. It's just absolutely a critical piece. You know as well as I do, when something happens in a school, we get these reports afterwards where people say, well, that person did whatever. Well, that person told me this or whatever. Well, come forward with that. Come forward before something happens. Like that's information that we want you to share ahead of a tragic event, or even an event where it doesn't always have to be tragic. That's the thing. Like we don't have to talk about events always being these giant things. We could talk about a child harming themselves as well, or somebody maybe we have no idea that a child is homeless or those kind of things. So it's a full spectrum of how we can help these guys.
Absolutely. And I think you bring up a really great point. Thinking back to, my own experience being in high school, I know that there were times where I had friends that had confided that they were maybe struggling with their mental health, or they were facing homelessness, or there was things going on at home where maybe they didn't feel like they could go to their SRO or another trusted adult on their campus. But at least knowing that there was that culture of reporting and sharing, just so that they could get the services that they needed and the help that they needed. And that I think something our SROs do so well is reminding those kids that most of the time they're not in trouble for sharing those things. You're going to help them get what the help that they need and the services that they need. Why also is it, kind of going back to those sharing of maybe social media threats in particular, why is it so hard when students just start to forward it amongst themselves instead? Because they are saying it. They're saying it to their friend.
Yes.
But why is it so much more important that they say it to you or a trusted adult on campus instead of saying it to their friend or sharing it amongst themselves without reporting it?
So great question. Time, right? Time is of the essence. So when we see that, we oftentimes see that a kid will take a screenshot and then send it on, or add their own layer to it and then send it on. So this, sometimes a purely innocent picture gets turned into a threat because people have added layers on to it and passed it on. And then we have no idea until a parent maybe sees it and then they bring it to our attention. Well, by that time, we have to go backwards. I mean, I've spent hours, all of the SROs and patrol as well have spent hours trying to get back to the origin of that picture or of that post to find out, is this valid or not? So it is absolutely paramount. It is absolutely, I mean, I can't stress it enough that we come forward with that information rather than hold on to it or pass it on or think it's funny and send it because it's not funny, or we get in that mode of that person would never do that. There's no way. They were just kidding. That was just a joke. There are no jokes when it comes to threats. And a threat to you may not feel like a threat to me if I'm just Lisa and not Officer Hale. The words that if you and I hear the same words, you might think like, oh, and I might be like, but it's still a threat. It's a threat is a threat. So if you feel threatened, you feel threatened. And so bringing that stuff forward immediately is I mean, it's what if it is real? We don't get to play that game. It is real to us until we've proven otherwise.
Absolutely. And it almost turns into that game of telephone where that first thing that is said, it changes and it morphs so much. And then also for our students who maybe they don't have the strongest relationship with their SRO, and maybe there's someone else on their campus, who are some other safe and trusted adults, at least on your campus that you work with, that students can go and reach out to if they have something that they want to share, and maybe they just don't feel comfortable for whatever reason.
Okay, so they always have their teachers, right? Hopefully they have at least one teacher that they've bonded with, or a past teacher, or sometimes kids form a relationship with a teacher that wasn't their particular teacher, but they just are really drawn to that person for some reason. So you have that. We have an incredible security force at all of our high schools. Our security people are incredible, so they could go to them. We have our people that work in the cafeteria. We have we have so many people. We have all of our administrators. We have our guidance counselors. I mean, we have social workers. We have librarians. We have all these great adults that are around. And then, of course, you have your parents. So it's a great question, because sometimes people do a lot of times associate us, SROs, as bad, right? As that's who we go to if we're in trouble, or that's who we go to if we're a victim. But that's not what we do. And so we work really, really hard to build those relationships with kids, because the stronger our relationships are, and the stronger that the relationship with the kids, and then the teachers with the kids, the safer our school is. So safety is definitely a part of those relationships, and they have that trust, and they feel like they can come forward with that information. Because these kids are going through a lot. There's a lot that goes on. I mean, social media we could have a whole nother podcast, and we could sit here like all day.
Yeah.
And if I could tell you how I feel about it, but it definitely opens a different door. It's a different stressor on them. And I like your analogy of the telephone game, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
So what we ask of them is, when they do see something that doesn't look right, we're not asking them to investigate it. We're not asking them to determine whether or not it's real. We're asking for them to come forward immediately.
Absolutely.
And if it's nighttime and they go to tell their parents, that's a call to the police department. So let us get involved. And our patrol, we work really, really tight with our patrol guys, and they will let us know when that kind of stuff is happening. They'll let our sergeant know, and then we get involved as well.
Absolutely.
Because that has a power to really affect a community.
It does. And I think you brought up a really good point a couple of times, is safety is not any one person's responsibility. It is the safety of your campus does not solely lie on you, the SRO. It is everyone. And any school, any community is safer when everyone is playing an active role in it, which is, I think, why, going back to the see something, say something, hear something, do something, the FBI has even used that since 9/11, because it is all of our responsibility. And there are always things, and sometimes it might just be that intuition in the back of your head saying, oh, maybe I should tell someone. And I also really appreciate that you bring up talking to a student, talking to their parents. And I know that there might be a lot of parents either watching this or listening who they want to have that conversation about safety, about social media, and just about all of the things our kids and our students are exposed to on a daily basis. But sometimes those conversations are awkward, or they're hard, or they just don't know where to start. For you, how would you have a parent start that conversation with their child?
I would tell them to be honest. Ask a question. Whatever topic it is, ask their child a question and find out how much they know. What do they know about that particular topic? What do they know about internet safety? Or the internet seems like an old word, right? How about social media safety, or Snapchat safety? Or what does it mean when you share your location? What does it mean when you have your location on your phone? And find out what they know. And then from there, you can build on what they need to know, in addition to what they already know, because a lot of times they don't know factual information about the sites that they're going to and the things that they're doing. they don't understand those algorithms. I do tell parents to watch The Social Dilemma. I think it's an amazing movie to show what is actually happening, and it actually has me where I'm like, I don't go on anything now because I don't want somebody. I'm not a paranoid person, but I don't like that when I look up I don't know, a mixing bowl, that everywhere I look on my social media or stuff, it's a mixing bowl ad or something. I know that's a terrible example,
No,
but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's those little cookie crumbs we leave all over the internet. And I think something that I think anyone can hear, but especially our high school students, is those cookie crumbs you're leaving, they follow you throughout your college life, your career, and all of those things. And I think it's something that our students today are having to face that even a decade ago, that it wasn't the same reality for those kids. And so it definitely does have a big impact in how our students relate to each other, how they share communication, and how our parents are involved in our students' lives as well. Is there anything else or any other tips that you would have for our parents regarding safety and the safety of our students?
Well, I was thinking about this question when you posed it to me earlier, and I think the biggest thing is educating them, empowering them with that education, but also being aware of what they're doing, being aware of where they're going, being aware of who they're with. A lot of times we'll get a concerned parent and you'll say, well, what are their friends' names? And they don't know what their friends' names are. And these kids don't even know the last name of their best friend, because on social media, their best friend's name is not their full name unless they do that. And then we tell them not to do that too, right? But know their friends' parents. It goes back to when I was young. My mom and dad would call where I said I was going to be, and make sure that that parent was home. I mean, doing those kind of things. I know we want to give our kids the space. I raised 3 of them, so I have a little bit of experience, but we want to give them the space to grow and mature and be productive people. But at the same time, we have to have boundaries, and we have to help them understand that, like you said, that I love that, like a little piece of a cookie.
Yeah.
I always tell the kids, like, when you put your foot in the sand and it leaves that footprint, or better yet, in today's world, cement, right?
Yeah.
Because it's solid.
It's
like
there.
what you did online is solid. And so it's like we tell them it is there forever. And when I got into this job, it was a long time ago, and social media wasn't anywhere near what it is today.
Right.
And I had no social media. I didn't even know what it was.
Right.
So it's like, educate yourself, right? So when my daughter was like, Mom, this is Snapchat. I'm like, what is Snapchat? Well, so much of what is not good going on comes through Snapchat.
Absolutely.
Comes through TikTok. So if you don't know what they are, educate yourself. Like get in there and look at it. And I always tell people, like, don't do it from your work device, but maybe at home.
Yeah.
Like, start Googling some of this stuff and educate yourself. And I do believe safety is not just physical. I do believe it is social and mental well-being as well. And so I tell parents, like, if your kids are talking about vaping, or they're talking about marijuana wax, and you have no idea what that is, or you hear a word that they're saying, Google it. Be careful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, make sure you're getting a reliable source.
Absolutely.
But do that, or call me. I have parents call me with some of the strangest questions sometimes. But that's because I built that relationship, right? I've worked really hard to build that relationship with everybody in the community, so they feel comfortable doing that, even if their child doesn't feel comfortable.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you also brought up Snapchat and the permanence of social media. I know one of the selling points, so to say, of Snapchat is that it's instantaneous. It goes away. And I think a lot of our students maybe really, truly believe that they send something on Snapchat and it's gone forever. But also going back to the fact that anyone can screenshot it, and anything on the internet, it does live on a lot longer than any of us think it does. And so just being cognizant of the things you're sharing, you're saying, or retweeting, or any of that, it follows you a lot longer than you would think. And then also, Officer Hale, I want to be cognizant of your time. So before I let you go, is there anything else you want to share with with our community, either about the work that you do as a school resource officer, or just about safety in general? I know it's a huge topic and there's so much to say, but if there's anything else.
There is a lot. And what I would urge parents, partners, guardians, community members to do is reach out to your SRO. Get to know your SRO. If you have questions or concerns, ask them. especially, we're in all the high schools. We're 7 high schools, so there's 7 of us. We've all been doing this job for a while, and we're all available. And that's one of the best parts and hardest parts of my job is how available I am, right? But I wanna help because I want these kids to have a chance, and I want these kids to grow up and be productive citizens. And like I tell them, you're going to be taking care of me one day, and I want you to do a good job taking care of me. So I would urge you to reach out to your SRO if you have questions. Reach out to your administrators. This place is like a giant family, and everybody in this place, and by this place I mean PUSD, wants these kids to be successful. And when something happens to one of these kids, it happens to all of us. So we want them to be successful. We want to be able to support them. It's important that people feel that and know that. And so it's like, if you're struggling, reach out. We have so many resources, either police department resources or resources the schools have, or our amazing social workers. I mean, we just have a really, really great community within a community.
Yeah.
And we're here. So I just would tell you, just talk to your kids, stay in constant communication with them, make them do that, Mom, when you're asking them too many questions. Do it. Because we have this one chance to raise these babies, and it's a really important job. And just be there.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. I know, as someone who grew up in this district, just how many safe adults there are every day. There is no place where a student will have more safe, trusting adults that are there, that care about them and want to see them succeed than when they are in one of our schools. And so I would just like, again, to thank you for being here and joining us, but also just for all the work that you do on behalf of our students to make our schools a safe and better place.